Hi, and welcome to Erik Penser Bank. Today I interview CEO Claus Elsborg Olesen of Initiator Pharma. Very welcome, Claus.
Thank you very much, Claus.
And reasons for this interview is the announcement you made recently of a positive preclinical results for the treatment of female sexual dysfunction. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more what you have seen.
Yeah, so as we know, Initiator Pharma is a company dedicating to making innovative drugs that treat peripheral and central peripheral nervous system disorders. And of course, our two lead programs has been in sexual dysfunction in men, either of organic or psychogenic erectile dysfunction. We have always had a belief that there's also an acute, completely underserved need out there for women suffering from FSD or female sexual dysfunction. But we did not really have any data to support that we could do something in such a space. And that's why we, in parallel to advancing the IP 2018 and put a fencing into the clinical trials, we've been looking into what could we actually demonstrate in preclinical models of FSD, or more specifically HSDD, so hypersexual desire disorder. And looking at what could we show here. And that's what we just announced, that we actually can see that in these models, we actually see that the compounds putafentin and also IP 2018 has efficacy. And for that, we're saying, okay, now we're actually ready to take the jump and broaden the scope of the company, where we before focused primarily on men's sexual health. Now we're actually looking at both men's and women's sexual health. Of course, we are more advanced with the men's because we have clinical results supporting this. But we also believe with the preclinical data we have now, we're actually in a really good position to come up with a very attractive offer going forward, expanding the scope of the current pipeline.
Mm-hmm. Could you describe a little bit further the models you have been using?
Yeah, so some of the models that we're looking at, you can say some of them are looking at behavioral patterns. How do the animals behave upon the addition of the compound or administration of the compound? And then we're also looking at very physical evidence. We're looking at increased blood flow at the genitalia. We're also looking at temperature increases and so on. So you can say very physical thing. Compared to what we actually saw, you can say with the RETI scan in men, looking at something that actually is giving us increased blood flow, we know is really important. But we also need the behavioral pattern. So this, the desire for having sexual activities is something that we need to strengthen. So it's a combination of both behavioral, but also you can say by physical or physiological relevant data demonstrating the efficacy.
Mm-hmm. And maybe if you just can give us some background of how female sexual dysfunction, how broad this problem, and similarities to what we have talked about in men before.
Yeah, so as I said in the beginning, it's actually a very underserved market. And what we have seen is that looking at people suffering from HSDD, so hypersexual desire disorder, it's about 1 out of 10 women that actually suffers from this. So it's not only that you don't have the desire, but you also need to be distressed not having the desire before you get this, you can say this clinical indication labeled to yourself. So you can say that, or this diagnosis. So what we can say that we know that sexual dysfunction in general are larger, and they range all the way from desire, arousal disorders, and also over to pain. So you can say it's a very comprehensive group consisting of different segments. But the most underlying condition is what we call the HSDD, so the hypersexual desire disorder. So that's actually what is represented in most of these diseases. Mm-hmm. So, and that you can say that we talked about that this is very common to talk about in men, but it's not been discussed so much in women before. And we feel that the time is ripe for doing that because, to have a successful sexual activity as a couple, it needs to both be the women and the male that are interested in having such activities.
Mm-hmm. And do you see the same sort of a difference between men? Age-related problems and more of a problem for younger women having depression drugs and so on?
So we see definitely there's a very diverse set of reasons for this in women, and you can see that the older the women get, the more desire disorder they get. However, that is a small aber here is that, as I said, to get the diagnosis of HSDD, you need to be distressed. And as women tend to be older, they don't get so easily distressed about this. Maybe they're more accepting. And you can say for good reasons, because there is no therapy today in the market. The only drugs in the market has been approved in pre-menopausal women. There is nothing for post-menopausal women. And the current drugs on the market are not very efficacious. So it's actually, you can say that the people are maybe just resigned that there is no treatment. I just have to live with this. But we know age is a big driving factor in this.
Mm-hmm. What's the next step for you now?
You can say now we announced that we actually have a play you can go into this space, and as we have done before, you know, we in the ED trials, we have been good way of financing this in the alternative means, you know, finding partnerships like we did with Mac, we did previously on the phase 2b trial that's going to read out here in Q4. Where they actually ended up paying a 70% premium on the share price, and then they conducted the experiment for us. So you can say they kind of co-invested in the program. We think that similar patterns could be really interesting going forward, but we have not decided at this time how we actually can create this value without, you know, minimizing the dilution of the existing shareholders, including us, the management team ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And does this change your view and how to partner, for example, pudafensine going forward?
You can say now with pudafensine, you can say that the clinical evidence we have is that from the phase 2a study that it works in these moderate to severe ED patients. And now we are expecting the data coming out in Q4 in the 120 patient phase 2b study. But you can say at that time we were only focusing on the male population. Now we're actually providing, you know, support, scientific preclinical support that this will also work in women. So you can say we have pretty much doubled the market. We know that the market is very substantial, but we also can see that now we actually potentially have a drug that will not be looked at as a ED drug, but actually as a sexual dysfunction drug that can help both women and men. And I think that will definitely broaden the scope. It will also broaden the scope that some companies are very much focused on looking at women's health. But I think that the combination that this is actually a drug that will help couples, you know, men and women for their sexual dysfunctions, I think it's a really strong case going forward.
Yeah, sounds very good. Thank you so much, Claus, for having this interview.
Thank you very much for the questions.